Hi, I'm Hannah.
Hi, I'm Abby.
And this is Spilling Ink,
the Inkswell podcast.
We are coming to you with a slightly different setup today for season 4, episode 5.
5, yeah. We had to change it up because your pregnancy has progressed.
Yes.
As you bounce away.
Just to break the podcast fourth wall, I'm currently bouncing on a yoga ball in an attempt to get this child out of my body. So,
but not within the next hour.
We pray. Hence why we are separate today.
Yeah, it was we did power through this last season, but it definitely had a point of you were like very politely, I'd quite like to stay closer to home, and I was like, of course.
Yeah, and like the last time we were together and recording, somehow I got blocked in by an ambulance, and that was that was insane. I took
funny.
matters into my own hands. I went full GTA.
That whole episode recording with Jeremy was a wild one because he was lovely and very accommodating, but I'd driven back 3.5 hours from a funeral, so I was like delirious and really tired and hungry, and then you were just very kind and accommodating, and then like trying to free yourself from this ambulance being like completely trapped in.
I know, but the weirdest thing was it was blocking the road, and it had its lights on, it's like there was obviously some kind of emergency, but I couldn't find any drama anywhere. I was like, where is the person who's in need here? Yeah. And so I just started I had to go on the curbs. I was dodging trees. You were
going cross country in a town cul-de-sac.
It felt pretty wild. It's one of the cooler things I've done, I can't lie, in my little yellow Mini.
I was creasing. I was stood at the window being like, I was like a bit like a mum. I was like, I'll wave Hannah off even though you couldn't see me, and I was just like, I was so tired, and then I was just like, what is she doing? It was great. I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah, I was just praying there were no like children, old people on the curb, because I was just like, I need to leave.
You were literally like, screw this, I'm out. Like, tap.
Yeah, but I'm just at that point now where I'm just like, I could literally go into labour at any minute, and I was like, imagine if I'm just stranded in the middle of Huddersfield, like that would be insane.
I've never wanted you to go away faster. I say with love.
I suppose I bet that was the best thing though, wasn't it, to be stranded behind an ambulance. Yeah. But yeah, so it was a wild. Yeah, Jeremy's episode was pretty wild. I mean, it was a great chat. We had a lovely conversation with Jeremy.
Lovely time, but
just behind the scenes, utter carnage.
I wish there was a certain level of and we wouldn't do this because we haven't got the time or the energy, but like behind the scene vlogs, because that would have been the best episode for a vlog. But yeah, you got home safe and baby isn't here yet, and you're gonna bounce away merrily.
I am, yeah. So if I do just dodge off very quickly, it's because it worked too well and I bounced him out. But somehow I don't think that's happening. He's very comfortable. But anyway,
I know we say this so often, but we really didn't see the end of this podcast being like this when we started.
God, no. I know. Honestly, I was just thinking. I was feeling quite reflective because obviously this is the last. It's the last proper episode, isn't it? And I was thinking, God, we've come such a long way, and from that introductory episode, and I was thinking about in January when we were really trying to narrow the art of podcast recording, because the first episode we did, it ended up taking nearly 5 hours, didn't it? Because we were
we recorded it twice because we were anyway, we should save this amount of reflection
for another conversation. Yeah, but we have come a long way. I'm just thinking this year has absolutely thrown us on a wobbly, but it's been such a lovely journey to document, hasn't it? But enough of that for now. Let's talk about this last season.
We're reflecting too hard, Hannah. But it's true. This season's been so. I think in terms of lining up with your pregnancy, I feel like this season has been what you needed. If you know what I'm saying, you needed calm, reflective, just much more interview, conversational based. You didn't need the empowering, energizing, I want to write for 12 hours and vibe that maybe the earlier seasons kind of had it originally.
Yeah, I've loved this season because it's really kind of satisfied my nosiness. Yes. I am so intrigued by people and people who work interesting jobs or are in really creative fields, because I just love finding out how did you get here, how did this happen, just thinking about Helen Monks and just the amazing things that she's done. and created. And Matt, who I've seen in the kind of poetry circle up north, and I've kind of always seen his work around. I've always been like, well, how did that happen? How did that come to be? And obviously Jeremy overseas. It's just been really interesting to just be nosy and be like, tell me how you got to where you are. I want to know.
Yeah, it's been really nice. And also, like, I feel like we've learnt so much as interviewers from this process that it was actually the perfect point that we were able to interview a lot more cohesively. I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's definitely felt like a chattier season, hasn't it, rather than a structured, these are the questions we're going to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed just kind of nattering away to people. It's been lovely. It's been a good one.
It has. It's been really, really good. Shall we go through our guests?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, beforehand, we did set some creative tasks last week, didn't we?
We did. We did. Okay, we'll do. See, this is what I need. You know, couldn't do this on my own. I'd just be like, let's just go where the wind takes me.
Yeah.
See where I'll go.
Well, to be fair, they weren't too intense, were they? I think as we are winding down, we're definitely kind of acknowledging that our capacity to take on more stuff is dwindling.
Yes.
So my creative task was about trying to make something independent? Absolutely not. Interactive, the opposite. So we were talking to Jeremy, and obviously he is a games designer as well, which I found games writer, not designer. Sorry, am I thinking of your partner? I'm thinking of Alex.
Well, he's a producer, but yeah.
Oh, there's just so much
going on. There's lots of
There's
titles.
all those roles. But yeah, games writer, sorry. And that is something that we haven't touched on, but it's such a, like, I don't know, popular field, isn't it? You know, writing doesn't just have to be for novels, for poems, for plays. Actually, there's just such a huge opportunity there that I definitely don't think we've acknowledged.
100%.
So that was great. And so my task was, could you take a piece of writing that you've done and add an interactive element if you were to kind of get the public involved? And yeah, I haven't done it myself because like that's quite a huge task, but I have been kind of like what we were talking about last week in terms of stories that can be led by the reader, and I was actually thinking that would work really nicely for children's books, because I think kids sometimes maybe get a little bit overwhelmed by the size of a novel or a really chunky text, whereas if it's almost like a bit of a treasure hunt and they're kind of flicking through the pages and going back and forward, I think that would work really well for a kid's book.
Yeah, definitely.
Something a bit different. So I didn't write anything, but I have had a bit of a wave of inspiration of, if I wanted to engage my children at school, could I create a little bit of kind of like a kid's book where it's like turn to page 50 to find out what happens, or go back to page 12, and it almost become a bit of like a
choose your own adventure.
Yeah, or kind of almost like you're orienteering through the book, you know, you've got to find the clues and things. So that was my wave of inspiration this week.
Yeah, no, I love that. There's definitely, I think there are books like that, which are like choose your own adventure style. You know, you're at a fork in the road. Do you turn left or right? If it's left, go to page 7. If it's right, go to page 8. And that's really cool. I can't remember the stat off the top of my head, but I think it was like the National Literacy Trust who was talking recently about how few children read for pleasure, which is something we touched on quite a lot, because I would assume both read quite a lot as children, and that's continued as adults. Definitely the case for me. And there was like lots of different schools of thought, which I kind of like to quickly touch on because I think I'd be interested to see your perspective. There was like one like argument that people were being like, well, all the children's books that like are being like promoted to kids at the minute seem to be like written by crappy celebrities, and they're called like Grandma's Last Fart and stuff, which I feel like we both know exactly which celebrity they were alluding to with that. There were also people talking about the fact that like libraries are shutting and that sort of infrastructure is just being minimised. Like I didn't realise, are there not libraries in schools anymore? Like are they going?
All depends on funding. So, I mean, I'm really lucky to be in a school that's part of a trust, and they really value library spaces. So we've got tons of books. But at the school that I trained in, they didn't have a library. Not a single book in the school. You do have charities who donate books to schools, and you know, so we'll use those in the classroom as maybe the text that we're going to study that term. But a lot of schools just can't afford to maintain the upkeep of a library.
Mad.
And as well, we live in a day and age which, unfortunately, I think kids aren't accustomed to how libraries work, and a lot of the books, they just go missing, or they don't understand the value of a book, and so they get damaged. They get, it's upsetting, but not many schools actually can afford a library now.
Yeah, no, I hadn't really clocked that, because like I was the kid who was in the library every break time, every lunch. Like that was where my friendship group were. Like that's where, like, I had a lovely librarian who got us to read like the children's booker. She would get all the children's booker prize books in, and then she would encourage us on like a Thursday lunchtime to go and read different books together in the back room, and like it was just such an important space. So I hadn't even like comprehended that like that had gone away, which is such a shame.
Yeah, I think as well, I was the same growing up, and libraries were quite social spaces. So we'd spend break and lunchtime in libraries. In most schools that I know, kids are not allowed to kind of hang about in a library anymore. That you have to be taken to the library by your English teacher. There's no kind of social element of discussing books, walking around and chatting about books. It's very much a teacher-led thing now as well, in my experience anyway.
Yeah.
Some schools might be different.
Which is mad, because if you think about like when I go to a bookstore, and if I go, like, I went with my friend Charlotte down in Bristol the other week, and we ended up buying the same book and reading it because we were walking around a bookstore talking together, and then just the bookseller was literally like, this is a great book that we were looking at, and we were like, cool, let's buy a copy each and read it, and it's been great. But like for me, bookstores and libraries are always really conversational places because you want to recommend.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then obviously the last one being like kids have short attention spans and aren't being like encouraged to read, and like aren't being like you say, I guess, taught the value of books, which sounds like a really sort of old person thing to say, but I think it's true.
Yeah. It definitely is, and I think unfortunately access to affordable books that's just getting ridiculous for children now. I think the only time really that they get access to free books is during World Book Day. They get these kind of book vouchers where they can tokens where they can get either a free book or a book for £1 or something. And you would be, they get so excited when they get given one of these vouchers because I can go and get myself a book. But unfortunately, we're at a time where the cost of living crisis means if your option is heating your house, filling the fridge, or buying your children books, it's just, that's the first thing that's going to go, isn't it? So a lot of these kids aren't being brought up around books at the moment. And you're seeing that in the massive decline in their reading ages. It is worrying how illiterate our children are now when they come to high school, just because they've not been exposed to books from a young age. Yeah,
well, we were talking about this is like so many avenues I want to quickly touch on, but I think one of the ones is like people talking about like the US election, which is obviously very fresh at the time we're recording this, and very, I imagine your end too, quite painful to see what's happened over there. And people were talking about literacy rates, but also people were like, Book Talk and Bookstagram, these like online book communities, were being like, Book Talk isn't political. And I was infuriated. I was like, books have always been political. Like Nazis were burning books, books are the first thing to be taken out of rotation, like book bans in America. Like it was such a naive, like, not even naive, like stupid thing to sort of say, but then also that ties into like the lowering of literacy rates, the fact that like literacy rates in America are dropping, and that's a whole thing in itself. But yeah, it's just really sad. And I think, I follow, they call like the free book campaign on TikTok, and they're amazing, and they just, like you say, just gather books and donate them and stuff, and it's amazing to see. So, and obviously I'm avid reader, but also avid collector of my books, and sorry for taking us off that tangent, but it's just it's like it just makes me really sad. It just makes like books are like, like for me and you, are integral to our lives, and it sucks that people are missing out on that.
Yeah, definitely, and it's through no fault of any parent. No. I think definitely parents sometimes maybe could try a little bit harder, but at the same time I completely empathise and understand as to why that's not the priority for their children when you want to have them fed and clothed. But yeah, that's why you then hope that schools could do as much as they could to fill that gap, but at the same time schools aren't getting funding, so it's like, it's just a vicious cycle, and that unfortunately has been caused by the Tory government. So we're now needing to kind of put a little bit of faith in this new drastic change that the Labour government are presenting, and see if it's going to get any better. Fingers crossed. I don't know.
I think we're sort of hit that wall of like, can it get any worse? Like austerity's so bad, and it's so like influential for people of our age. Like it's just completely shaped like our sort of late. Well, it's been like it's 14 years. So 14 years ago, we were both like what 12,
Yes.
12, 13.
I can't math right now.
We're like 27, aren't we?
I think so. Yeah, we know we are.
We're 27, so yeah, about 14 years of austerity. So we were 13. So like literally our entire teenagehood has been austerity. And yeah. Anyway, just a really interesting like choose your own adventure stuff for the kids would be really good to kind of like it's like an accessible kind of gaming element that they have some sort of control over that might sort of convince them of the joy of reading.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I completely agree. I find what you just said really interesting, though, about celebrities kind of dominating the children's book industry at the moment. Because you are absolutely right. When I'm trying to think of a book actually now that hasn't, a kid's book that hasn't been written by a celebrity, and they do all seem to be about poo.
Written by a celebrity.
Yeah. And they do all seem to be about poo. I'm just thinking about it, like, it's about silly, immature kind of topics, isn't it? And
yeah.
I actually don't remember reading a single book about poo growing up.
No.
Which is strange.
So my aunt is a nursery teacher. She's been an amazing nursery teacher for years, and she was really good at getting kids' book recommendations that she gave to us when we were growing up. And now with my partner's nephews, I am that like family member being like, here, have books, like and there was one called Dirty Bertie, and that had poo, and it was just a gross little kid, and that was it. And that's the reason I remember it, is because it was such like a weird pivotal change that like having Dirty Bertie in the house was like, oh, it's naughty, he talks about dog poo.
That was exactly us, but with Captain Underpants. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
My mum was horrified. She was like, because we brought it home, I think it was my sister, she brought it home from the library, and she was like, do they have these in schools? This is disgusting. And it's like, oh, it's going to get a lot worse, Susan.
Yeah, that was a cultural shift. Captain Underpants.
Yeah, definitely.
It's true. And like, I mean, we talk about like Keira Knightley writing her debut kids book, and I'm like, why are you doing it? Like, why?
I know. Yeah, obviously people can, expand and bleed into different industries
100%.
and disciplines, but it's like what you say, kind of, are they writing it themselves? Are they taking it seriously, or are they just, like, why are they feeling the need to dip their toe into that pond?
Like, I'd love it more if, like, go on celebrities, get that dollar. These books will sell well because, if Keira Knightley sticks a name in a children's book, I mean, you'll think, like, if you think of like Keira Knightley, I instantly have like sort of like upper class kind of countryside, like stately homes, very like watercolory kind of like Paddington-esque illustrations. Like, I already think I know what she's going to do. Pair that with a young up and coming debut author with a debut illustrator, and like do them as like a pack, and being like, cool, you get Keira Knightley, you also get like this author's book, and like sell them together. Like, if you're in a publishing house, sell 2 books together and like give authors a chance to like do well off the bat. And like, it also, let's be honest, it will look good for the celebrity, because like it's like great PR.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah,
that would be a fantastic opportunity, wouldn't it?
I know. Someone pick it up and credit me. That's fine, but just do it.
You haven't got anything on next year. Start it yourself.
Oh my!
Get in touch with some celebs.
Don't.
You've got a lovely quiet year.
Yeah. Work is totally. For those who don't know, I work for Bradford 2025. Next year will not be chill.
Next year will be the year, won't it?
Next year, we just did our first on sale, and it was amazing to see people like responding well to the events we had, which include the Railway Children. They're doing a theatrical version on Keighley and Worth Valley Railway, which I'd really recommend.
I saw that. I was so excited by that.
I would very much. It's all next summer as well, so it's July, September. So there's like time before the kids come out of school and time after when they're back in, which is quite nice. Which will definitely when I go see it. But yeah, it's going to be a great one. So I would very much recommend people check that. But yeah, no, I keep choosing more creative projects, and my lovely partner is just like, please stop.
Yes, have a breather.
Yeah. Anyway, wonderfully tangential and very reflective. Creative tasks. I love that you're thinking about how you're going to do it with your kids. That sounds great.
Yeah, I think it sounds fun.
And then you are pretty certain that you know my creative task. For once, I'm not going to pretend that I know what I'm doing, but you said when we discussed this before that mine was planning your next creative project in line with what you've learned from this podcast.
Yeah. I believe that's what it was. I mean, we could just listen back, but
We could.
Who's that prepared these days? Eh?
This is the quality of organisation we've hit at the end of the podcast.
Yeah,
I'm not doubting you. I want to say I'm not doubting you. I just cannot.
No.
I cannot remember for the life of me.
I am. I feel. Yeah. If not, then.
If not, I'm just gonna like click and put a like a new recorded section and be like, we were both wrong. But no, I believe you. I'm not gonna lie. I haven't thought. Well, no, I keep having daydreams about all the insane creative projects I want to do and all the things that I obviously do not have time for. But I will say actually, which I really like. So me and my partner have just started having relationship meetings, which we've seen on social media a lot. Because we are both super busy people, and we came to live together quite quick. Well, it wasn't quickly. We've been together 2 years when we moved in together, but the original plan was 4, so it was like a lot sooner than we anticipated. And obviously, it was a bit of a mess how it happened, and we just realised we weren't like talking about like food together. So we were food shopping and just buying separate food because we weren't thinking about what we were going to eat together, or I was like putting plans in the calendar that he hadn't known about, or vice versa, just because and it could be like alone or together. Anyway, so we had these relationship meetings which are just more like check-in times and like talking about like what priorities we have that week and what we're going to cook together. It's not like super serious, but it just means that we actually have time together. And off the back of that, I realised that actually I think because Alex is a producer and he's wonderful, and I was very careful, like I don't want him to produce my life, but we're now going to start having creative meetings for me, which are basically like Alex helping me set sensible boundaries and deadlines and like supporting my creativity in a way that actually means that like I can do something, because I often am overwhelmed by the fact I could do anything that I don't do anything. Like I could do everything else, I don't do anything because I'm overwhelmed. So it kind of ties in quite nicely with like planning my next project, in the sense of I'm going to try and plan something more cohesively with him, which is really, really nice. And I guess that's kind of like it doesn't have to be a romantic partner, it can be a friend or a family member. Like if you're feeling overwhelmed with like the over, like I feel like I'm overflowing with creativity, have like a accountability partner, just have someone to like also like sense check you, because I'm not gonna lie, I was like I can do other podcast elements on my own, I can do videos, and then Alex is just like, no you can't, like this is enough. And it was really nice having someone break that and be like, no, it wasn't even like you can't, he was like, you can do that but you won't, and that was actually really helpful.
I know exactly what you mean. You almost need somebody to, because I think we struggle sometimes to realise just how hefty a task is, or how much kind of work is going to have to go into something if you're going to do it right and if you're going to do it properly. I think there's an element of naivety sometimes. So you need someone to almost hear it and almost repeat it back to you, like, you're going to do all of this and like this and this and this as well, to actually realise, no, there's no way I'm going to be able to do that. I know exactly what you mean. I think that's a really good idea. Someone just giving you a reality check and just saying, there's no way you're going to be able to do that. Choose one of those things that you love and put your all into that instead. Yeah,
which was so painful, because like I started listing out all the projects, all the collections, all the videos, all the like things I want to do, you know, even just Inksville, like building a website and planning the next festival and the next few months without you, like it's like even just that I was like, oh, this is actually quite a lot. And I'm not and he was also really good at being like, also I'll be like, in the nicest way, because that's a big phrase in our relationship, is like, in the nicest way, which is how we soften feedback. It's very important. He was like, in the nicest way, you're not actually even doing that now. Like I know I probably will have an admin turn this afternoon where I'll just go through all of the Inksville messages and reply to them, and like people checking in and asking stuff and like organising things. And he was like, in the nicest way, you're not even doing the stuff you're doing now, so why are you looking to add more to that? Which is really painful, but like I'm really glad I have someone who can like call me on it and be like, let's not pretend. Let's not do this. And then also hopefully once I start narrowing down the projects and acting on them, having someone to have the accountability to be like, so how's that project going that you said you were going to do? Have you done it? And I can be like, yes, hopefully.
Yeah, and then they could be like, okay, no, moving on to another massive project until this one's done. Like,
Yeah.
that's something that I'm really, really bad at. But I think it comes down to this idea. I think we talked about it at the very beginning of the podcast about FOMO, doesn't it? I think we're always kind of wanting to try something new. We become inspired by something. I mean, I've talked about this. Every single guest we've chatted to has inspired me in some way. But I can't possibly do everything I want to do on the back of those conversations because it's impossible.
12 guests. Like,
Yeah.
a guest, like, when I broke it down, I was like, wow, we have basically had a guest a month, which is really cool. To think of it like that. No, I'm terrible for, like, not finishing and half doing stuff. And I think that's why, like, I'm sure we'll sort of expand on another time, is, like, just the fact that we finished this podcast, like, this is done to completion. It's a complete thing. And hopefully, like, people are able to use this, you know, next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, because it's set up that they can just do it over a year and have that time, and maybe we will need to update it, but maybe we won't. Anyway,
we're leaving a legacy. That's what you're saying.
So I'd recommend if anyone sort of feels they need the focus, to actually have someone you trust to call you on your, like, nonsense as well. Don't just be willing to just be like, yeah, no, it's fine that you want to think that you can do a podcast and a video essay every month next year, and also this and also that. Have someone who's like, no.
There's just no way that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Give your head a shake.
Yeah.
Do that one thing, but do it really well. I think that's brilliant. And that kind of ties into a lot of the stuff we've discussed this year in terms of being collaborative and having a writing partner. Maybe it's not a writing partner you need, it's a reality check partner who just kind of helps you keep your diary and your projects in check. I think that's a really, really good one.
I hope so. I mean, we haven't had a proper one yet, because Alex was like, write out all the creative projects that you want to do.
And then as you were writing them out, you suddenly realised you started writing a novel instead, or writing a pamphlet of poetry instead.
Oh, I know. I was just sat there thinking, this is all totally doable. I'm completely delusional. I was like, but yeah, it was good. It's going to be really interesting to have that chat with him and actually figure out what I want to. I want to do something creative next year. What is the thing? You know, the one thing that I want to do.
Yeah.
Now should we? I feel like we've done a big old ramble. Should we talk about our guests now?
Yeah, go on then. Just our lovely little final seasoners.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it in one of the last 2 episodes or something, where I was just like, I feel like Bruce Forsyth, where I'm like, you're my favourite. But that's how every interview finishes. I'm like, that was just my favourite. And it doesn't diminish any of the quality of the people that came before. I think actually it builds on the legacy of what we've talked about with them. So we started off with Matt Abbott. It'll be like 3 weeks ago in podcast episode terms, I imagine.
Yeah.
It just so nice to talk to someone so invested in the local area, like someone who we've both interacted with because we've both been doing different work in the scene.
I think that's. I've always wanted to talk to Matt because he is kind of this fleeting presence who I've always kind of passed and brushed shoulders with, but never actually managed to pin him down and kind of chat to him about his work, his career, and it was really nice to have the opportunity to do that. And for the exact reason that you just said there, he is so invested in the local community and he's so invested in kind of providing opportunities for the next generations, that I was just like, we're quite similar in quite a few ways, so it'd be really interesting to kind of get his perspective on some things that I'm quite passionate about as well. And I think what I found throughout the podcast is we've had quite a few similar guests. So kind of Matt gave me Colleen energy as well. Very down to earth, very kind of like realist about the industry. Definitely kind of working hard to like get that elitist barrier demolished and make poetry more accessible to everyone. And I think that's what we've tried to do with this podcast as well. So it's been really nice to have kind of very relatable conversations. Yeah,
100%. It was just so nice. It felt like a lot of the work he was doing with what was Nymphs and Thugs.
I heard nipples.
It's going well.
Nipples and thugs.
Which is now Livewire. It felt very similar to Inkspill. It felt very like, bringing people together and sharing the joy of writing and having people just enjoy listening to work, which actually, funny enough, ties into our first guest, Faye Marshall, she performed at one of his events, and that was one of her first events, I believe.
Oh right, okay.
So it's funny how like all these like interlocking connections, which is really, really nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just nice, and just also like Matt is just such a good writer. Like it was really nice to enjoy just talking to someone who is investing in this sort of cultural work, but also his writing, and also just the fact that he shouted out Maria, his wife's book, which will be coming out very soon, I imagine. So that was a really sweet way to end that interview. And then we went on to Helen Monks, who I was another guest where I picked and I was like, I feel like Hannah. This is like a Hannah person. Yeah. I had that with Rosa. I had that with Rio. I had that with Adrian. There were a few people where I was like, I just feel like Hannah is just gonna like sponge and suck up all this like poetry goodness.
Yeah.
And just her work, having seen it at the Fringe last year, stunning. Being able to talk to her about the work she's doing, having that sort of political, I was gonna say edge, but it's not an edge. It's like the centre of the work that she does is political storytelling, because, like I touched on, people were like book talk isn't political. I think everything's political. I think we forget that, and I think we try and make peace with like, there's a certain degree of, especially at the minute, of like having to make peace with certain horrific things that are going on around the world, because there's only so much you can do and so much time you can dedicate to stuff. But it was really nice having someone who like put those stories at the centre of her work, with what Lung's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's the question that I always get my kids to consider is, why does this text exist? No text is ever written without a purpose. So I always say, like, why does this text exist? Why has this been put out there into the world? And I think I really enjoyed our conversation with Helen, because just the essence of the kind of theatre that she produces, I think it was just brilliant, because she's really trying to tap into real world problems, real life problems that currently exist, that aren't given the limelight or the spotlight. And I just, it was. I found it a really inspiring conversation, because it showed me just how political this field can be, and just what you can do with it. Literature can and it will change the world, because it's words that, I don't know, words can be weapons, can't they? But words can also save the world, I feel, because just look at some of the speeches that have had the biggest impact on the way we live and on society. And that's what I always try to tell my kids. I'm just like, it's always going to be political, because words can change the world. So yeah. And I just, that got a bit deep, but I think that's what Helen is very much trying to tap into with what she's doing.
Absolutely. And also doing it really beautifully through story, like the way it's told, really like sticking to that verbatim theatre, like really encouraging people to own their experience and not trying to take away. And like, I was at a writing conference yesterday, and there was a short story writer who was talking about basically queer history, and how queer history has existed in the invisible, and it's the writers, it gives writers opportunities, and writers should feel encouraged to basically breathe life into these stories. And I think that goes to any kind of marginalised history. There's always, I just read Small Things Like These, which is a new, it's going to be a film with Cillian Murphy. Cillian Murphy?
Oh, yes.
Is it Cillian Murphy?
Yes.
Is that his name? Who's in Peaky Blinders?
Yeah. I'll Google.
I've panicked.
Yeah, Cillian Murphy. I know what you mean, but that didn't sound right, but it definitely is Cillian Murphy.
Yeah, I know. It's beautiful. It's a really short. I've been really trying to read a lot more short stories, and it's just really beautiful and like really simply written. But I mean that as like a compliment, because like it's not flowery and like, I feel like, I don't know if you've read it, but I feel like it's very up your street.
No, and I've not even heard of it, and I always find that really bizarre when, I mean, that sounds very full of myself, doesn't it? But when it's kind of got to the point where it's been made into a film, and I've not heard of it, and I'm like, if it's based on this really beautiful book, how have I not encountered it yet?
Because as much as we love books, there's like, I mean, like 100,000 being published. It's not 100,000 every day, but like there's a lot every day going out into the world.
Yeah, exactly.
But I believe this is a quote he said, not verbatim obviously, but he talked about how basically he's got the star power now, and now he wants to turn a lens to Irish history, because he has that. Good. And I don't know where I read that, like, don't quote me on it, but I believe that was like from an interview that he said, and I was like, what an empowering thing to do, and that feels like very in line with like Helen's work, with Lung's work. which is really, really cool. And she's just very vibey. Just nice. Just like trying to get you off the phone. I was like, Hannah, we have to go. And you were like, just one more question.
This is what I mean. It's been my nosy season. I've been like, tell me more about that.
No, it's great. Like, I think as the podcast has gone on, while we've got to become better interviewers, we've also become more curious. And I think actually we've wanted to carry on conversations a lot longer, which has been really, really nice.
Yeah, definitely.
And then last week with Jeremy.
Yeah, final guest.
A final guest. That was very strange to write on. Like, when I did the social media announcement, I was like, and our final guest? I was like, it really is ending.
It was a lovely one to end on as well, though, because I think it was nice to have a writer who was so diverse, I want to say, in terms of the disciplines that he's kind of chipping into. He's definitely not just putting himself down one alley. He's tapping into a fair few industries there, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was interesting to kind of to hear from somebody who did have such a vast amount of experience, but also wasn't ashamed of the fact that he's like, I do everything.
Yeah,
and
he does everything with such interest and depth and skill, which is really, really cool. Yeah, it was lovely. Obviously, you were very excited that it was our first international guest, which I loved, across the pond. But it was nice having like that. Like, we've really tried to focus on, and I'm just quickly reflecting on our guests, predominantly northern, where we can. I think we've basically done that, with the exception of Adrian being the Midlands, and maybe Culane. Apologies if Culane, I can't think where he is from. But we've basically tried to stay out of London has been our big sort of key passion, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Just keeping it like in other areas. So it was quite nice to finish on an international perspective and have that sort of change and sort of have something different to sort of finish on, which was really, really fun.
Yeah, and he was just really insightful, wasn't he? Kind of I think he was very realistic as well in his advice, which I enjoyed. No kind of dressing it up to kind of, I think sometimes we can be quite unrealistic with how accessible these industries actually are, and he was very much like, it's going to be hard, but like, it's worth it kind of thing. And to just do it because you enjoy it rather than because you're going to get money out of it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the case. And also he just talked about the fact that like it does take a lot from him trying to swap between these different sections, like these different disciplines. It was just a wonderful guest to kind of finish on and have that kind of time with someone who is working in, having that moment where we suddenly realised that there were so many writing industries that we hadn't spoken to. Like, we hadn't had someone who'd done game writing, we hadn't talked to anyone who'd done screenplays, and even as I was thinking, I was like, we could have had, like, that was a joy of choosing guests, but also a weird thing of like, we could have had journalists, really, we could have had blog writers, we could have had copywriters, there's so many, like, many writers doing wonderful things that we just didn't have time to touch on them all and have that time with them, which is a shame. But
yeah, I think that's the thing. We started out on this with this podcast very kind of creatively led, didn't we? It was very much kind of poetry, novel writing, creative writing. But I think as we've progressed, you can fight the fact that real life has just such a huge impact on work, and it's interesting. And so many of our guests never just stick to one thing, do they? They are so they do have such a range of areas that they write in. And so I think, towards the end we felt like actually there's so much more we could do with this podcast. And again, I think that just shows a little bit of our naivety at the beginning, that we were just channeling these two routes, because naturally as it's progressed, we've been like, no, we're going to have to talk to someone who writes dramas, we're going to have to talk to somebody who designs games, because these are all areas that people could tap into if they wanted to.
And we feel like we got, even though you went to become a video game writer, there was still stuff that you pulled from Jeremy's interview that you were like, actually, I can apply this. Like, I don't think we would have thought to make our writing interactive in the same way if we hadn't spoken to him, or verbatim theatre, having that time with people to interview them off the back of Helen's interview.
I'd have never have thought of writing a collection of poetry for children, but then after speaking to Matt, I was like, well, why not?
absolutely.
You know, why not have a go? Why not have, just try and see where it takes you? I think that's it. It's just encouraged us to be more experimental, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, huge thank you to our wonderful guests of this final season. Like, the time we spent with them was just so influential and lovely. And like I say, I joked that Hannah couldn't get off the phone, but I didn't want to go any sooner either. Like, we were both having a great time talking to them. So yeah, big thanks to them.
Yeah, definitely. It was a really lovely season to end on, I think.
Yeah, it was. When we sort of put this sort of podcast structure together, it felt like, reflection, like how much do you actually need that? But I think editing and reflection have been the 2 seasons that I needed the most.
Yeah. I needed to hear from someone else. It's hard, but you will get there.
Yeah, absolutely. So that this is sort of bringing us nicely to the conclusion of this episode, which is nice.
Yeah, we've talked about, obviously with this being the last kind of official episode of the season, what do we want to leave you all with? Do we have a nugget of wisdom to kind of to give you all? But in actual fact, I think every single episode has been an individual nugget, hasn't it? We've been able to take something from everyone. Yeah. And so I would say, if you are still feeling like you need to be re-inspired, just go back to the beginning again, maybe. If maybe you've not been here since the very beginning, because because I've noticed it through recording it and listening to these back, just how much we've changed as people from the beginning to now. I think, go back on that journey. Go see what you can take from some of these guests that we've had, because they have been absolutely incredible. Yeah,
absolutely. I feel like there's an important question that I honestly cannot remember if we asked in episode 01, which is, Hannah, what's your favourite book?
Oh yeah, no, we did.
I don't think, and also, like, if there are any super fans out there being like, you definitely asked that. First of all, I highly doubt you exist, but if you do, thank you. And also, it's been a year for us. We don't tend to listen back to our own episodes too often because
we hate the sound of our own voices.
We hate the sound of our own voices.
We just cringe, don't we? Like,
but it could be a fun sort of like moment to pause and just be like, on reflection of this last year, is there any sort of book that you've read that you'd like to recommend?
Well, I'm just going to be that person who says, no, I can't think of one, but here's 70 and all my reasons why you should read them. But
I've
got some key ones that I think have... Do you know what? That's another thing I've taken from this podcast. I think this is such like a definitive question in that whatever your answer is defines you as a person. And I've always felt like this pressure to pick a really intellectual, academic, I don't know, like classic, because I want it to make me look really good.
War and Peace.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah. Like, oh yes, I've actually read Ulysses, from start to finish.
I loved it every minute.
Yeah, James Joyce, my boy, and I think that's it. It's like, this has actually encouraged me to think, no, actually, The Gruffalo's a fantastic book. Like that, just some of the things that people have suggested, I've been like, oh, there is no shame, actually. That is a really good book. And if you enjoy it, who cares? So, on that note, I think the book that changed me the most, that made me realise I love literature and I want to pursue it, was Thomas Hardy's Far from the Madding Crowd. So much so that I did my dissertation on it. Loved it. And also Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. So they're my pretentious books.
Cool.
Just damn good book that I love, because I've read it when I think I was like 13, 14, and I loved it because it was just really sweet and charming. It's called The Snow Child, by, hang on, let me just double check. Her name is, I'm going to mispronounce it. I've never known how to pronounce it. It's spelled Eowyn. Would you pronounce that?
Owen?
It's
Welsh, I believe.
Yeah.
Or
Ewan Ivy. I've definitely mispronounced that, and that is terrible of me. But I didn't pre-prepare this, so I didn't get a chance to Google.
That's okay. I'm just like throwing it out.
But it's a beautiful book. It's just lovely, and I have always loved that. And then my final one is Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God, because that goes down in history as the most beautiful ending to a novel that I've ever read. To the point where I cut it out and put it in a frame. I defaced a book and put it in a frame because the last page of that novel is just the most beautiful ending ever. I would actually get it tattooed on my body.
I am like wonderfully horrified because the amount of grief you've given me through the series of this podcast of being like, I highlight my books, I break the spines, and you're like, you cut up a book, Hannah, you monster.
Because it's stunning. Because it is stunning, and I need to see it every day of my life. And it's the most beautiful final paragraph. And I was like, that's how you end a novel.
Amazing. I actually haven't read that, so I'll add it to my extending TBR of books to read. Love it.
What about you? Have you got a list, or have you got one?
I'm just gonna quickly turn and have a look, because you said some good stuff. Ariel by Sylvia Plath, both editions. I like reading them in tandem because there's the original version, which Ted Hughes published posthumously and edited her manuscript. Opinions to yourselves. And then there's the restored edition, which came out a couple of years ago, which is like the original manuscript.
I wasn't aware of that fact.
It's so good. I really recommend it because you see exactly what she wanted, which was really, really nice. And I just really enjoy Plath. Classic woman of my age kind of energy. I appreciate that.
I only recently read The Bell Jar. I've never really read that before. It's an interesting one, isn't it?
I can't say it's my fave, but it was. I think there's a recognition of its timeness and timeliness in books.
Yeah, I can see kind of like the references to mental health, why, especially from a woman, why that would have been quite shocking. Yeah. But anyways, sorry, carry on. Sorry.
There is the Pendowicks by, I believe, Jane Birdsall, which is like a kid's book that my parents got me when we were in Texas because I was 10 and I had my birthday over there. And I've only ever read it as a standalone novel, and I recently found out it's a series, and it's really stupid, but I read it as like a historical novel. Like basically the premise is like these four sisters go to stay on a rambling old estate in America. They're all American, and they drive over in a car, and other than that there was no, as far as I remember, no reference to technology. And I was like, it's like a old, early 1930s 40s, like cars are around, but it's like a historical novel.
Right.
I read the blurb for the second book, and they use a mobile phone, and I was like, I can't read this. It just ruins the immersion that I had for this. Like, I'd set up this old, like, I think there's a television, reference to a landline, and a car, and I was like, that, for me, that era, like, tied it in and made a historical novel. So I'll never read any more of the series, but it's just this, like, beautiful, timeless, like, sort of classic, sort of summer holidays, it's kind of like the Famous Five kind of romp in a rambling old estate. So that was really instrumental. I'm just sorry, I have to have a look because my brain's gone blank because I'm so tired. I feel like I need like a classic one. Oh, Pride and Prejudice. I'm a big Pride and Prejudice fan.
Oh, come on.
That's my that was my like finding historical books funny and realising that I was never a big Bronte fan. I was never a big I'm trying to think of another. I don't like Victorian Gothic. I'm not that kind of person. I like funny stuff. And what's one more? I want one more. Sorry, you said. I don't know. This is going to be such an interesting moment for people watching as I pivot around. Oh, you know what? A non-fiction. I love Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's a really accessible thing of like just like basically developing healthy habits, and it was like my kind of first foray into non-fiction books because I wasn't really that interested, and I really enjoyed it. So there's my sort of weird rambling. I don't think my favourite books on reflection, but they're the books that I can see immediately behind me and like remind me, and I'm positive about. So yeah.
Well, we've said, haven't we? Because obviously so many people have recommended some absolute gems throughout this podcast. And as we are kind of wrapping up and you'll be thinking about Christmas, we are going to put together a list of the books that people have recommended in case you have decided to buy them for yourself or for a friend or a family member. So I think, but just keep your eyes on our socials and we'll collate a full list of everyone's recommendations, I think. That sounds like a good idea.
That sounds like a very good idea. I look forward to going and just watching the very ends of episodes so I don't have to hear us talk too much.
Yeah. Very true.
Do we want to just touch on the little gift that we have coming next?
Yeah, well, you go for it. You reveal.
Yeah. So as we've kind of alluded to through this episode, because we basically have to keep both pulling ourselves back from reflecting too much on the whole podcast, we had an introductory episode to the podcast, which was basically us rambling, as we acknowledged, for like 5 hours, because we recorded it twice because we were so awkward. We wanted to do, and Hannah very aptly named it the epilogue, which will be coming out probably in like a week or so from when this podcast goes live, which will be us with a very special guest. We're going to have a little interview with our wonderful editor, my partner Alex, who has watched hours upon hours of us talking.
And it simply would not, this entire podcast would not have happened without him. Not a chance.
We are so grateful to him for the time and the effort he has spent on this. So we've done it multiple times, but I want to give it a little bit of time to actually talk about what he's learned and what he's noticed, and probably laugh at us a bit, because he's the one that's seen the uncut ridiculousness that we've done.
Yes.
Which again, the thing we've alluded to, we probably will do, is as a Christmas treat, we'll do the bloopers reel on YouTube for people to check out, because it's okay to laugh at yourself being silly, and it's been a wonderful experience to be silly with you on this podcast. So yeah, we're gonna record that with Alex. We're gonna have a good chinwag with him, and we're just reflect on the whole project in this epilogue, and just round it off and talk about what we've learned, and have some time together to be proud of this, because we should be, and as humans we're very quick to be like, oh, it's done, that's fine, whereas I want to be a bit like, whoa, we did this, through all of everything possibly going wrong, or wonderfully right in your case. So yeah, that'll be coming next week.
Very nice. Yeah.
Lovely
So
stuff.
if you decide to call it a day here, it has been lovely speaking with you. I don't know, speaking to you this year, and we hope you've managed to take as much as you needed from this. And yeah, it's just been, what a journey. What an experience.
Yeah, we hope you do join us next week. I think Alex will offer some really beautiful insights that I'm excited to hear. But yeah, please keep writing. Please, don't drop that. Don't stop that. Keep finding the time. Feel free to listen to this again. We won't be because we hate. No, I actually think I was reflecting on this, and maybe this is in for next week's episode. But maybe I will actually spend some time listening to this again, because actually listening to it as like a listener and not someone who's like, oh, my voice, why have I said that? Why am I talking so much?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You kind of been a listener rather than kind of the host of it.
Yeah.
That would be quite interesting. But yeah, just thank you so much, and thank you to you, Abby, because my God, the amount of hours we have spent together just yattering away, you have to have a pretty special bond with someone to do that, haven't you? Because and for it to actually just feel so natural and I don't know, enjoyable. We've definitely we've channeled into something good here, haven't we? So who knows what happens in the future, but for now it's been really lovely.
Yeah, it's been lovely, Han. It's been a really great time. Not doing this episode with you in person has been very strange, but I'm glad we've made it work, and you've had your ball to bounce on.
Yeah, it's been really nice. I mean, the video that Alex is going to have to edit, I'm just absolutely hula hooping my way around. I'm just having a great time.
Definitely this is an episode to watch on YouTube, to be honest. I'm just Hannah, if you have that ADHD energy, you'd watch something. But no, it's been lovely. It's been natural. It's been fun. 10 out of 10 would recommend. It's just been
nice to talk about literature and books with somebody who understands and can also nerd out with it as deeply as I do. So yeah, thank you to you as well, my love.
Thank you to you. Let's sign off this one. We hope you will join us next week. But if not, thank you so much for listening. And
that's the end.
See you in the future, maybe.
See you at Inksville.
See you at Inksville. There we go. That's a good sign off. See you at Inksville.
See you at Inksville.
Bye.
Okay, bye.